From San Antonio, Texas, this is the Manly Training Podcast, a podcast about how to do life God's way. Each week, we deliver a meaningful message that will encourage you and give you a biblical blueprint to live life the way God designed it to be. Whether it's parenting, marriage, sex, or how to overcome life's curveballs, the Manly Training Podcast will bring a biblical perspective to each week's theme. And now, here's your host, me. My name is Eduardo Quintana, and I am your host. And I must say this very humbly, I'm not an expert. The information I bring to you each week is from God's Word and from personal experience. This week, we take a hard look at family. Today's topic is a sober warning. So what's the big deal about Adam and Eve and their sin? Well, let me give you a sober warning. When we sin, the consequences of that sin are like a ripple effect on the surface of a body of water. What Eve did affected Adam, and what they both did affected us all. When I disregard God in my life, I adversely affect the lives of those closest to me. We can say, when we break God's rules, it's not hurting anybody but me, but that's simply just not true. You see, sin is like a cosmic boomerang in the home. Were it not for the grace and mercy of God, not only the first family would have been sunk by tragedy and sin, but so would we. Even still, our disobedience to God not only hinders our walk with Him, but it trickles down to those around us. As a man who's a husband and a father, my sin has a huge impact on my loved ones. If I rebel against God, my wife and children sense that rebellion, and my attitude is contagious. You see, this is very clearly illustrated in what happened between Adam and Eve's first two sons, Cain and Abel. Genesis chapter 4, verses 3 through 7 say like this: When it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best of the firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but He did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. "Why are you so angry?" the Lord asked Cain. "Why do you look so dejected?" You will be accepted if you do what's right, but if you refuse to do what's right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and be its master. Abel was a true worshiper of God. He worshipped by faith in God's plan. He had learned from the example set by God what true worship is, and that true worship involved blood sacrifice. So that is what he offered. Cain, on the other hand, offered a grain sacrifice which was unacceptable to God. It was by faith that Abel brought a more acceptable offering to God than Cain did. Abel's offering gave evidence that he was a righteous man, and God showed His approval of his gifts. Although Abel is long dead, he still speaks to us by his example of faith. You can find this in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 4. So Cain envied his brother Abel for having his sacrifice accepted by God, while his own offering was rejected. Then he chose to take the life of his own brother. Verse 8 and 9 say like this: One day, Cain suggested to his brother, "Hey, let's go out into the fields." And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Afterward, the Lord asked Cain, "Where's your brother? Where's Abel?" "I don't know," Cain responded. "Am I my brother's guardian?" So how could this happen? It happened because of the residual effects of sin. Cain chose to make the same foolish mistake his parents had made and disregarded God's instructions. their self-willed attitude and disobedience to God's instructions rubbed off on him. We all run that risk when we disobey God. We not only break God's heart and hinder our walk with him, but we're also like poison ivy to those with whom we come in contact with. Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And now, back to the show. I remember growing up in Missouri. We had a house in Gladstone, Missouri, and we had a small mobile home at the Lake of the Ozarks. Every spring and every summer, I'd brush up on some poison ivy and break out in hives. The allergic reaction I had was pretty intense. I remember being in terrible misery one time from the effects of the radicans. It makes poison ivy sound even more wicked when you use the scientific name. Sounds like an evil character out of Star Wars. Anyways, I remember times when my eyes were nearly swollen shut from an allergic reaction to poison ivy. I recall being covered with calamine lotion. Your skin would itch just looking at me. Cain was exposed to a rebellious attitude against God, and it stuck with him. We know that Abel chose to obey. I can sin all I want to and rebel against God, and my kids may not be affected. My family members won't be influenced. Well, perhaps not. Maybe they won't have an allergic reaction to the poison ivy of sin. Thank God he has given each of us free will. But why make it difficult for those that we love to obey God by setting a bad example? Sin is never a solo pursuit. Even if those you love don't follow your bad example, their hearts will be broken watching you miss out on the joys of walking in the light of God's truth. So, here's that solemn family flaw warning I mentioned at the beginning. Sin is never a solo pursuit. Others in your family may not follow in your disobedient footsteps, but your attitude and your actions will affect their lives. So line up with God and let him give you the victory over the effects of sin in your life. Next Wednesday, I'll share 2 basic ways to survive your family flaws. So don't miss the next installment in this series. Subscribe and get notified as soon as the next podcast goes live. Thank you so much for joining us this week on the Manly Training Podcast. Make sure to visit our website at manlytraining.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Anchor, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we would appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply just tell a friend about the show, that would help us out a lot too. If you like this show, you might want to check out our YouTube channel, The Manly Training Show. It's a fun and dynamic way to approach God's Word. At Manly Training, we do it God's way. Until next week.